Hermes stole his half-brother's sacred cattle on the day he was born, then talked his way out of the crime before sundown. This is the story of the trickster god who got away with almost everything and became so useful to Olympus that even the gods he'd deceived ended up trusting him with their most important errands. Hermes was born to Zeus and Maia, a nymph and daughter of the Titan Atlas, in a hidden cave on Mount Olympus. Most infant gods take years, if not decades, to reveal their divine nature. Hermes needed about 12 hours. By midday of his birth, he had already crawled out of his cradle, invented the lyre from a hollowed tortoise shell and cow gut strings, and set his sights on his half-brother Apollo's sacred cattle herd. That night, he stole 50 of Apollo's finest cattle, walking them backward to disguise their tracks, and hid them in a cave before sneaking back into his cradle as if nothing had happened. Before Apollo even caught up with him, Hermes slaughtered 2 of the stolen cows and performed what the Greeks came to regard as the very first sacrifice to the gods. He divided the meat into 12 careful portions, 1 for each Olympian, and set his own portion aside untouched. It was a strange kind of honesty for a thief less than a day old. He'd broken the rules of ownership completely, then turned around and invented the ritual that would define how mortals honored the gods for the rest of Greek history. Apollo, understandably furious, tracked the cattle to Hermes almost immediately despite the trick, and dragged the infant before Zeus demanding justice. Hermes, barely a day old, denied everything with a straight face, claiming he didn't even know what a cow was. Zeus, more amused than convinced, ordered Hermes to return the cattle. But Hermes had one more trick. He offered Apollo the lyre he'd invented that same morning as a peace offering. Apollo, captivated by the instrument's sound, forgave the theft entirely and accepted the trade. In exchange, Apollo later gifted Hermes the caduceus, his herald's staff, and taught him a limited form of prophecy, beginning one of the more unlikely close friendships in the Greek pantheon. That first-day hustle set the tone for Hermes's entire divine career. He became the official messenger of the gods, carrying Zeus's commands across Olympus, down to mortals, and even into the underworld when necessary. His winged sandals and winged helm let him move between all 3 realms faster than any other god, making him uniquely suited for a role no one else wanted or could fill. He carried the caduceus everywhere he went, and while later centuries would mistakenly link that staff to medicine, in Hermes' own hands, it was purely a herald's symbol, a guarantee of safe passage and neutral status wherever he delivered a message, even into hostile or dangerous territory. Where Zeus ruled through authority and Athena through strategy, Hermes operated through speed, charm, and information, becoming indispensable specifically because he was willing to go anywhere and talk to anyone. One of Hermes's most significant roles ties directly into a god we've already covered on this channel. As Psychopomp, Hermes personally guided souls from the world of the living down into Hades' underworld, acting as an escort through the same passage that would end every mortal life in Greek belief. Hermes was also said to be the one who guided Persephone back to the surface each year when her time in the underworld ended, making him a direct thread connecting nearly every major death and afterlife myth in the Greek pantheon. Before we get to the god Hermes once put to sleep with nothing but a boring story, hit subscribe now so you catch every side of the trickster before the episode's done. Hermes's cunning served darker purposes too. When Zeus needed to free his lover Io, who had been transformed into a cow and placed under constant watch by the 100-eyed giant Argus Panoptes, he sent Hermes to handle it. Hermes approached disguised as a simple shepherd and slowly lulled Argus to sleep with an endless, deliberately boring story, then killed him once every last eye had finally closed. Hera, devastated by her loyal guardian's death, took Argus's 100 eyes and placed them on the tail of her sacred peacock, which is why peacock feathers display that distinctive eye pattern to this day. We covered this from Ares' side in an earlier episode, but it's worth repeating here. When 2 giants imprisoned Ares in a bronze jar for 13 months, It was Hermes who eventually tracked him down and secretly freed him. It's a small but telling detail about Hermes' character. He wasn't a warrior, wasn't a king, wasn't feared like his siblings. But when someone needed finding, or freeing, or delivering a message no one else could get through, Hermes was consistently the god who showed up. Hermes' role as Zeus's errand runner had consequences far beyond small favors. When Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each demanded to be named the fairest goddess on Olympus, Zeus refused to judge the contest himself and sent Hermes to escort all three goddesses down to a Trojan prince named Paris instead, letting a mortal make the call Zeus wouldn't touch. Hermes delivered the goddesses, delivered the golden apple that started the whole dispute, and then stepped back to watch. Paris's choice of Aphrodite, and the promise of the most beautiful woman in the world that came with it, set the Trojan War in motion. Hermes didn't choose Helen, and he didn't start the war. He just handled the delivery. Hermes' cleverness wasn't always aimed at helping. When the gods created Pandora, the first mortal woman, as punishment for Prometheus stealing fire, each Olympian gave her a gift. Athena gave her weaving skill, Aphrodite gave her beauty. Hermes gave her something considerably less flattering, a shameless mind and a deceptive nature, along with the gift of persuasive speech itself. He was, by Hesiod's own account, personally responsible for teaching the first woman how to lie convincingly, right before sending her off to open the jar that released every hardship into the human world. Hermes' own son turned out to be just as strange as he was. With the nymph Dryope, he fathered Pan, a god born with the legs, horns, and beard of a goat, so unsettling in appearance that his own mother reportedly fled at the sight of him. Pan grew up haunting the wild places of Arcadia, and travelers who heard rustling in the woods with no visible cause, or felt sudden, irrational fear in an empty forest, blamed it on Pan's presence rather than their own nerves. That specific, groundless terror is where the word panic comes from directly, a linguistic legacy from a grandson of Atlas that still shows up in everyday English thousands of years later. That same helpfulness, when he chose to give it, extended to mortal heroes too. Hermes lent his own winged sandals to Perseus for his quest to defeat Medusa, another myth we've covered from multiple angles on this channel, giving the hero the speed he needed to escape the surviving Gorgon sisters after the beheading. Beyond individual favors, Hermes was also worshipped as the god of boundaries and travelers generally. Ancient Greeks placed carved stone markers called Hermes, topped with his likeness, at crossroads, property lines, and city gates across the entire Greek world, asking for his protection on every journey and every threshold crossed. Much of what we know about Hermes' birth and early trickery comes from the Homeric hymn to Hermes, one of the most detailed and entertaining single-god narratives to survive from antiquity, essentially reading as an origin story built entirely around cleverness rather than combat. He also appears extensively throughout the Odyssey, guiding and advising Odysseus at several key moments, fittingly enough for a hero whose own grandfather Autolycus was said to be one of Hermes' sons and inherited his gift for theft. Hesiod's Theogony establishes his parentage and his role in Pandora's creation. His name also survives directly in modern vocabulary. The word hermeneutics, the practice of interpreting texts and meaning, comes straight from Hermes, fitting for a god whose entire job was translating messages between worlds that couldn't otherwise understand each other. Roman mythology adapted him into Mercury, keeping his speed, his role as messenger, and his association with trade and commerce almost entirely intact. Hermes' legacy is unusual among the Olympians. He's remembered not for power or beauty or wrath, but for being genuinely, reliably useful, even when that usefulness came with a con attached. He talked his way out of his very first crime by inventing something beautiful enough to make the victim forget he'd been wronged, and spent the rest of mythology applying that same combination of charm, speed, and boundary-crossing cleverness to nearly every corner of the ancient world. Messenger, guide of the dead, matchmaker for a war he never wanted credit for starting, patron of merchants and thieves alike. In a pantheon full of gods defined by what they ruled, Hermes is defined by what he could get done. We've now covered Hades, Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, Ares, and Apollo. This channel isn't done with the Olympians yet. Subscribe so you don't miss whoever comes next.